Yeah, I don't know why I'm sort of like, I don't know, either being told to go over this more and again, or it just sort of like popped up like that. But yeah, so I actually discussed all of this with my therapist before the trip to Maine, because before that, I think I went over this on Facebook, but um, in terms of like specifically people that are around her, just so they know what her condition is. Um, Before that, she came up with that we were going to go to Maine and meet her mother, and we went to South Station and bought the tickets, and that's the time when she was like, "Why is your name on the ticket?" That was almost like she was revealing that she never intended for me to use the ticket, because why would you wonder why my name is on a ticket when we're supposed to be going somewhere? Um, that's sort of like a forced utterance where she's like admitting that she has no intention of taking this trip. Um, and that was sort of like she was brought here to meet my mother. And then, and which it should have really been noted what I mentioned about odd silences and not being at ease. Like, because some people don't actually make up that they have situations with their family, and that's why they're not living there at the time. Um, and, like, not they're a whacked out sadist, so their family had to get them out of their living environment. But, so then after that, um, she did one of her weird things where it's like all of a sudden she just starts being like wicked, completely mean and sadist and sick. And like right as soon as we got back to Quincy Center, she started doing it. And then when we got back to the shelter, and I believe that she purposely does this stuff like inside the shelter so that people leave, because when you leave the shelter, like that's like a lockdown facility, and when you leave the shelter you have to stay out of the shelter for 2 nights, and I think they actually changed it to 3 nights now. And she's like doing this to people that she knows they have nowhere else to go. It's like that sick. um, so that was the time that that um, that Lisa person was there, and I had already explained to Jen that Lisa person was trolling for threesomes, that she was trolling me for a threesome. And when I mentioned that to Jen, she never said anything to me about Lisa, like that she talked to her or she had a relationship with her or anything. So that's just kind of like the backstory on what's coming up next. So we get back to the shelter, and I believe that was the day that I got my denial letter from SSI, that I wasn't going to get SSI, and she was told that, and then I go to bed for the night, and I thought she was going to bed for the night, right? So then I get up the next morning to have breakfast before she went to work, because we had already agreed to that. And she's there, and all of a sudden she starts, no lie, in the dining room of the shelter, just starts yelling at me. I'm talking like actual yelling at me, and saying, "Why are you up? And you're up to talk to other people." And she was like I think on first like glance of view of this, that people might go, "Oh well, she's got to have some kind of quote unquote mental problem, like she must be manic or something, or she's paranoid or whatever." But in the totality of everything that happened, like you have to really kind of think about it. Um, it you know what I mean? Like that's kind of a coincidence that one, she doesn't mention anything about knowing this Lisa person when I say that she's trolling me for a threesome, and she finds out I'm not gonna get SSI. And, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you this part. Before I go to bed, Lisa goes over and talks to her and says to her, and I quote, "Oh, how are you doing?" And, "Oh, I got him to go in, to come in." Like, they obviously knew each other and had talked to each other about this Lisa person's boyfriend. And that she got him to come into the shelter. This is the same Lisa that's trolling me for a threesome, right? So, then it was the next morning after that when she starts yelling at me. And just, it was like ridiculous. And she goes, "I'm ripping up the tickets to Maine," and all this stuff. And she's like, I mean, it was brutal. And I cannot believe that the shelter did not kick her out of the shelter after that, because that's pure and simple domestic violence, or, assault, whatever you want to call it. But a person should not be able to attack someone in an emergency homeless shelter like that and be able to stay there. I don't know what the hell the shelter staff was thinking, but that was like absolutely ridiculous that that entire thing went on. And it was the second person that she did this to, at least, because she was seeing some guy there apparently whose name is Chris. And I was told by residents that she was doing the same thing to him, that they were having yelling fights in the dining room, and he finally left, and he was like living in the woods or something. Um, so, I mean, come on, that's the second person, and you're still allowing this person to stay there. Um, so anyway, so then I left, like, and I think that I had a bed at that time, so I didn't, and I couldn't go back to my sister's again, just because of, not even gonna get into that, but like, um, that's not a place for me to be. And so I couldn't go back there again. Um, and then it was like, that was the whole incident about that. I think it was the same day where I guess she was telling someone else that she was thinking about leaving the shelter for a couple of days, and she's apparently she went back to the shelter in the middle of the day and had a fight with the people at the shelter, and like she thought she was like going somewhere, getting housing or something, is what it seems like. And that she was like, "I work 40 hours a week," and da 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 da, and she stripped her bed and left. And then that very night, okay, there was like this massive, massive torrential downpouring rain that was like all over the news that it was going to be. And they have a TV in the shelter that, in the morning and stuff, the weather's on there. Um, and people have phones, and they use the computer at the libraries and stuff. Like, they're aware of weather forecasts there. And that it was going to be just a really, really horrendous rain. Um, and all of a sudden that night, Jen's gone, Lisa's gone, and Lisa's boyfriend's gone. Okay, it doesn't really take a rocket scientist to figure out what happened there. And then to like completely abuse me before doing that in some sort of like meth madness or something, like that's what she's doing instead of taking meth or something. So I explained all of this to my therapist. It's not like I just you know um, sounds bad, but it's not like I just rely on Almighty God, but it's like I actually, ran this by my actual therapist I had at the time, which is another thing. Then I lost my therapist because of this chick. But, so, because it gets worse, that's why. And I mean, I don't really want to get into what my therapist said about it, but trust me, it's not like my imagination that this chick is like really sick. Um, so, like, after that, like 3 weeks go by, and I'm like in the process of applying for housing, and I put in for reconsideration for SSI, and I'm dealing with DTA, like I'm doing like all the normal things that an adult would do who's trying to sort of like, fix their situation. And and seeing my therapist weekly, which I enjoy doing. I've always enjoyed weekly therapy. And I went to the Y and spoke to someone at the Y to find out if I could get some kind of reduced rate to have a membership at the Y, because it was the fall and the winter was going to be coming. So, and I wanted to, I had gotten back to smoking because of all this abuse that was happening to me from this woman. So I wanted to try to have some, way to encourage that instead of my other regime with like the 10 miles a day walking, because I love swimming. And like I had done all of that, and all of a sudden this guy whose name is Jonathan, that apparently is some friend of hers, and he was like around, and all of a sudden, like, first of all of a sudden, like, her and him are like hanging out together, and they're like wearing matching shirts and stuff, like they're going out. And then all of a sudden the guy is trying to get me to have sex with him. Like he's hanging around with me because apparently he must have found out that I had just gotten my EBT cash. It was like that month. And it's like, sharks in a bloody water as soon in that place as soon as anyone finds out you have a penny in your pocket. But it was like all of a sudden he's like wants to hang out with me, and then he came out with it at the end, midday, that he was trying to get $100 from me to pay for a hotel room. And I was like, no way, buddy. That was like the end of that. I was like, no, that's the end of this. Because I was basically letting him spout off and finding out, I guess, what was going on with him and her. And then I came to find out, because someone told me, that he asked her to like split a hotel. This sounds like what he was doing with people, that he was like looking to party or something, and he wanted to split a hotel. And apparently she said, well, she would do it, but it's not private enough. Like, she would do a hotel with him to, FUCK and party, but it was only if it was the two of them. Like, she wasn't interested in a platonic partying, right? Then this guy's trying to like screw me, and he's talking about the Grand Canyon. Like, how the F would that guy even find that out about the Grand Canyon? Like, whatever him and her's conversations were together, the two of them, they're obviously both sick. And they both said the same thing about if you walk on this side of the road that you're a prostitute and all this stuff. Like, so they clearly had some kind of conversation with each other, and they're sickos. So after that, like, he's saying something about you could try to make her jealous, and friends with benefits. Like, he was trying to engage in sex with me, and I'm just like, as I stated, sometimes I'll kind of just like hang around listening to like wacko people talking, and like just to find out like how wacko they are, or if I'm trying to get information about something else. And it's kind of like amazing sometimes how stupid people think other people are when they're not. So anyway, that's that guy's deal. And then so 3 weeks go by, and I'm like trying to avoid this whacked out sadist woman in the shelter, right? And she's barred from the dormitory because obviously because of what she was doing to me. And so she's like in another room in the shelter, and she wants to get back into the dorm and get a bed, and they won't let her back into the dorm. That was like their solution, apparently, rather than getting rid of her or transferring her to another shelter or housing me or something. I mean, they actually they own housing. And that was their solution, to keep her in a shelter with me, harassing me. And as she's concocting up these sadist ways to get me out of there so she can get a bed back in a shelter, her and I think Fat Karen sort of had that in her mind too. Because Fat Karen's in the dorm telling people, yeah, well, after Mary's gone, Jen's going to try to get her bed back in the dorm. And she's talking about how nice it used to be when it was just her and Jen and like some other person and some other person and all this crap. Um, and then the two of them are in the resource room talking about Jen's sex life and that she likes fat chicks and all the stuff she used to do in Portland and get drunk and this. And, I mean, it was like, that's probably what someone else said when they said something about I'm tired of this, I'm tired of the BS, because it was probably becoming obvious to her that people are pretty sick. Um, so I was gonna say something about after the 3 weeks, but then I remembered another thing and now it's slipped my mind. Um, Yeah, after the screaming thing in the dining room. This is like the same thing with the Lisa brought her boyfriend in and Jen's screaming at me in the dining room and ripping up the tickets to Maine that she never intended to use anyway, because why is my name on the ticket? Um, oh, that's right. Karen starts telling other people and me, okay, because this is like days later or something, that she is going to go to Maine with Jen. This is what she's telling me, that she goes into like an elation, and it's like she's going around like she's all happy and elated, telling people in the shelter this personal stuff about Jen, and that she and Jen are going to Maine to look at apartments. And I just go, what? Like that. Like I wasn't even like, extra flipped out or like raising my voice. I was just like, what? And then she's the woman that like started asking me if I've ever had a split personality. Like she's sick with sadism to a degree too. Um, so that's why I don't like her, because I think that she kind of, pretends to be nice, but she's not. Um, so that went on, and then during the 3 weeks, um, that Lisa woman starts saying that I guess I'm going to look at apartments in Vermont. And so after this is another thing that happened during the 3 week period, and I specifically discussed this with my therapist. Um, as I'm trying to avoid this woman, um, I'm eating. I think it was dinner. It could have been lunch at the shelter, and that Jonathan guy comes and sits down next to me, and we're eating lunch. And one thing that Jen would have a habit of doing during these, I guess, breakups, when she's on her break from abusing me, that she would sit in a table like right behind me, and sometimes her and her co-six would like start saying things extra loud or whatever, but she turns around and she says, can I talk to you? And I go, I don't think there's a need of that. And then she doesn't take that for an answer. She gets up and she goes and she sits next to Jonathan, and she starts talking to him like she's wicked cavalier about it, and like smiling and shit. And she's like, oh well, I can't remember exactly what she said, but she's like, well, you might get somewhere with her. I'm not gonna get a word or something, like it was like bizarre. And she was saying something about friends or something, and I was just like, I just got up from the table, and she's like, well, why can't we be friends? And I go, because you're an asshole, Jen. Okay. And then I mentioned something about, I said, have fun. I hope you had fun in Maine. Have fun in Maine again. And I just like, I left and went to my bed and had like a massive panic attack because this person would leave me alone. Um, so, um, that was during the 3 weeks, and I discussed that with my therapist, like the whole thing about what happened with yelling at me and ripping up the tickets to Maine, and I'm not even sure if I mentioned the thing about Lisa or Fat Karen. That's just that stuff alone. And so then, after the 3 weeks, all of a sudden she's apparently caught wind of the fact that I got my EBT cash approved, and that I'm being asked to fill out queries for housing, which should indicate a person's about to get housing. And then I put in a reconsideration for SSI, right? So, and she wants to get back in the dorm, and all that stuff that I mentioned about, somehow it's my fault that, her and Karen can't have this ridiculous love fest with the two of them in the dorm all night long, talking about their sex lives. But, so after the 3 weeks, she decides to start talking to me again. And she wants to go back out, and da 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 da, and we're gonna go to Maine again, and we're gonna get married, and da 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 da. So then she mentions to me um, some sort of mistake that she made at work, and that she was thinking about moving to Vermont. Okay, so that kind of goes back to that Lisa woman that was, in my opinion, her and that guy and her and Jen clearly went and did some sort of fucking somewhere. Again, pardon my French, but when I'm mad, I sometimes say that. And plus, that's what it is. It's not like they were having a relationship. But, so that sort of, like, to me, is, again, forced utterances. And I also think that they do it on purpose, because sadists are like that. They want you to know the things that they're doing to harm you. So, like, this stuff I didn't even get a chance to tell my therapist, because right after me, I left again. I left Quincy for good. So she's telling me that. Then, when we were in Maine, this is something that I didn't mention, and because we were there for 2 nights. The thing with the whole dinner with their family and trying to kick me out of the room at like 10 o'clock at night. And I think I said she'd check my phone. She actually tried to take my phone. Like, she left, like she was going to abandon me in the hotel and not pay or something. And then she came back and tried to actually take my phone. But I told her that if she pulled this crap again, that I was going to report it to the police. And I think that's the only reason she stopped what she was doing. But she starts saying something to me about Lisa. That she's like, oh, I wrote you a letter, but Lisa told me that I shouldn't give it to you. Like, she really wanted to make sure I knew about this thing with her and Lisa's boyfriend. And it was like I already sort of kind of knew it. But it was like one of those things with Phil, like you're gonna make sure that you know it, So that's what I'm saying about her being a sadist. And her, like, I think that she purposely talks sometimes in like a wicked, whacked out way. Like, you can't even ask her a question. If you ask her something, then she like asks you another question. Like, it's kind of difficult to explain unless you experience it with her. But she wasn't doing any of that with her family at this dinner. So, yeah, so when we got back after the main thing, which was kind of like, when you're in that kind of a situation, you're almost like in a shock that a person is like doing that to you, that's going to kick you out on the friggin' streets in another state when you have no money and they're going to take your phone. You kind of go through the motions until you can get back to some sort of safety, like back to Quincy. So, we go back to the shelter, and I think it was like the next day. It may have even been that day, but it was at least the next day. Not more than a day had gone by from the time we got back from Maine to what happened next. Um, Another sort of like bad weather night was coming. And so all these people that had been out camping were like coming back into the shelter. And in this, I think I had mentioned that she, because of this whole um, getting married thing, that she like insisted that I get a copy of my birth certificate and that I bring it to the shelter so that we could get a marriage license. And which again, this is the type of stuff sadists do, believe it or not. So because it's sort of like they're controlling you, and they're abusing you, and they're getting off on that. And they think that, and they're hurting you because they envy you, so they're like liking that they're doing that to you. So I get the birth certificate, and I come back to the shelter for the check-in, and we get in there, and we're like in the dining room, and she's I think that part of the thing that she uses a paranoia excuse for is when she's sort of like checking out people, and then she'll act like, why is that person looking at us? Or if you turn to look to see what she's looking at, that she'll be like, what are you looking at? Like that type of thing. She said, I say something about the birth certificate. She goes, well, I don't want to rush you. Like, I mean, that's sick in the mind. And then she starts this bull crap about Mark, because Mark entered the dining room, and she's clearly watching him. And then she starts saying something about why is he looking at us, and this and this and that. And I said something about, it's interesting that you notice every person in this room when you're having a conversation with me, and the only person that I'm focusing on is you. And she starts this thing with the where she'll just, like, it's a picked fight, and then she turns it around on you, and then she gets up and throws her soda can away and leaves, like in this huff. And it's like sort of like she's indicating to other people that she's once again like somehow tricked me, and now she's like getting rid of me. So I stand up and I turn around, and that guy Dominic is there, like right behind us. Like that's what she was looking at the entire time, because I knew she was looking at people behind us and not looking at me as she's having a conversation with me. And so I just, in my mind, after everything that had happened, I was like, I am absolutely done. I gotta get out of here. This chick is driving me crazy. Like, like I reached the point where I just had to get the hell out of there. So because I think that I could have been pushed into speeding the shit out of her. And I don't think I've ever done that to anyone in my life. But I think after someone pulling that kind of bullcrap on a person, it's like she, in a way, deserves to have her face smashed in, to be honest with you. Like, you know, uh, uh, anyone not doing that, like that Chris guy, if she was doing that type of stuff to him and he didn't punch her in the friggin' face, you know, more the power to him. Because I was like pretty close to it. At that point, I think if I didn't leave the shelter, that I could have been really pushed to just beating the crap out of him. She's only like 5 feet tall. It's not like she could ever take me in a fight, you know what I'm saying? So, I, I, yeah, you know what I'm saying, like, that was a whole other thing that's not really that significant, but she started saying that all of the time, like, indicating that she was maybe talking to that guy, Dominic, or something. It was like, all of a sudden she started saying his phrase over and over again, but, because she never was using that language before. I don't know if she was somewhat, at that time, kind of inadvertently being herself and not doing this pretend to be mentally ill thing to abuse people. But anyway, So, I just went into the dorm to get my stuff and dropped off the ring and left. I just went to the thing and said, I need to have my stuff, and I got the hell out of there. And as I'm leaving, she starts yelling again, like she's yelling at the staff. And she goes, see, she's sick. And it's like, yeah, I'm sure everyone in here thinks I'm sick, wacko, okay? After this 4 months. I don't think so. I think people realize how sick you are. But that's like at least person number two at the same shelter that you pulled that stuff with, and you go shelter to shelter. You admitted that you've been in all these different shelters, you lived in different states. I mean, you're clearly a wacko. Um, so I guess I'm, in a sense, I'm glad that I did the public a service by revealing that. And people got to see her photo, so they know who she is. They know her first and last name. They know what she looks like, and like actual text messages that she sent to me to my phone after that were posted all over Facebook. I think the public needed to know that for their own safety, um, because after I left, okay, now a person who actually had some sort of like quote unquote mental illness where they couldn't control outbursts and just had an outburst and didn't mean it would not have their person that's supposed to be their fiance, okay, leave a shelter like that because of one of her episodes and then not follow her out of the place, not even call her, okay, to find out if she's all right, where's she gonna spend the night, and it's another bad weather night, okay, that cruel and sick. But she replies to texts that I sent after I left by calling me the next day, right? And not to apologize, but to start, I don't know what she was even going to say. She starts saying something about, am I making threats to her? And it was like pretty much like, yeah, you better hope I never see you in this state, okay? I'm not at Father Bill's place anymore, so if I see you somewhere, it's not like I'm gonna, lose my bed if I friggin' punch you in the face and slam you to the friggin' ground, okay, cunt? Um, so yeah, really stay away from me because you're a wacko. Um, and then she starts like texting me, mad texting me, and it's just like insults. None of it is normal. And I'm trying to deal with thinking that I was going to be married, okay, and having that's completely shattered. And she's just like texting insults at me, like I'm still crazy. She's like, you know, something about getting help. I wouldn't say that if I didn't love you. Like, I mean, she's wicked, wicked, sadistically sick. So I'm glad that that was revealed, and that other people in the shelter, if she's still there, are made aware of that when they come in, because I've seen her in action trying to pick up other women, and I don't even feel that she's a homosexual, that she actually hates women and she's a sadist, and she only does that in order to commit sadist acts against women. So, really, really watch out for that.